Hi there, welcome back to Mysteries Channel. Thanks for clicking on my video. Today's video is going to be kind of like some random musings. Things that I came across where I'm like, that is kind of interesting. It bears some mention, but I don't have enough information on it to make an entire video. So it's just a bunch of stuff kind of crammed together. Well, not a bunch, it's only 6 things, but they're super interesting, at least to me. Anyway, let's just start. This is a Cherokee history. It is called the Massacre of the Anikutani. Almost sounds like Anunnaki, but it's not because it's Cherokee. Some versions of it call them the Nicotani, which again is interesting because that sounds like nicotine, but hey, whatever, let's just get to it. A more detailed statement on the authority of Chief John Ross and Dr. J.B. Evans is given in the 1866 account that speaks of a massacre having occurred about a century before. Although, from the dimness of the tradition, it is evident that it must have been much, much earlier. The facts, though few, are interesting. The order of the Anikutani was hereditary, and this is something that seldom happens among Native Americans throughout the Americas and is said to never happen among the Cherokee, and that is to have power pertain to a family as a matter of right. That is never the way they have operated, at least that we know of, except for this one little excerpt that I found. The family of the Anikutani or the Nicotani, whichever way you would say it, for it seems to have been a family or a clan, enjoyed certain privileges. The power that they exercised was not, however, political, nor does it appear that the chiefs were elected among them. Anikutani, they were mystical, a religious body of whom the people stood in great awe, and it seemed to have been somewhat like the Brahmins of India. How they attained their power, or how long it was maintained, we'll never for sure know. But we do know that their extinction came by a massacre. The Anikutani became haughty, insolent, overbearing, and lascivious to an intolerable degree. Relying on their hereditary privilege and the strange awe that they seemed to inspire among the natives, they did not hesitate by fraud or violence to rend asunder the tender relations of husband and wife when a beautiful woman was present, or excited their passions. The people long brooded in silence over the oppression and the outrageousness of the high caste that they were, and they began to deeply hate them, but they were also greatly feared. At length, a daring young man, a member of an influential family, organized people to massacre them. The immediate provocation was the abduction of his wife. His wife was remarkable for her beauty and was forcibly abducted and violated by one of the Anikutani while he was absent on a chase. On his return, he found no difficulty in exciting others with the resentment that he experienced. So many had suffered in the same way. Nothing was wanted but a leader, someone to help them overcome these evil people. So this young brave, in his hatred and resentment in his heart, organized the tribe to go and find every single one, every man, woman, and child of the Anikutani, and slaughter them. And from that time forward, never again in the history of the Cherokee would anyone ever have hereditary right of power. Another interesting tiny little blurb I found about the Cherokee is that they once had a wooden box, nearly square and wrapped in a buckskin, in which they kept their most sacred things of their old religion. Upon every important expedition, 2 priests carried it in turn and watched over it in camp so that nothing could come near it or disturb it. The Delawares captured that box, and since then it's never come back, and because of the capturing of this box, trouble had come to their nation. I find both of these interesting because never have I heard of anything like this about some kind of religious order that presided over the Native Americans. Never. So that's very interesting. I also never heard that they had a different type of religion than the type that they exercise now. So yeah, I thought I'd throw it in here. The next one is weird, and I might be reading a little bit too much into it. The other day, I did a video on the giants and the gods at war. And in the Greek version, according to most sources, the battle that started this war was the giant Alcinous stealing the cattle of god Helios. A prophecy had it the giants would only be defeated if a mortal were to help the gods. And to protect her children, Gaia the earth tried to find a plant that would shield the giants from any harm. So I tried to find out what damn plant it was. In my head, I thought maybe it's a vine, I don't know. I thought it was a vine. But no, this is what I found instead. I couldn't find a picture of a plant. What I found was the name of the plant is called pharmacon. Pharmacon, in philosophy and critical theory, is the composition of 3 meanings: remedy, poison, and scapegoat. Scapegoat, I think that's interesting. The first and second senses refer to the everyday meaning of pharmacology. I think we all could see that, right? And its subfield, toxicology, makes sense. Deriving from the Greek source term pharmakon, denoting any drug, while the third sense refers to pharmakos, a ritual of human sacrifice. What? I just thought that was interesting, and it made me feel like the original meaning of pharmacy may have been human sacrifice. And you think, oh, how does that make any sense? Apparently, in the days of old, a slave, a cripple, or a criminal was chosen and expelled from the community at times of disaster, famine, invasion, or plague, or at times of calendar crisis. I imagine that might be eclipses and things of such. It was believed that this would bring about purification. On the first day of the Thargelia, a festival of Apollo at Athens, 2 men, the pharmakoi, would be led out as if to be sacrificed. In the earliest traditions, it is believed that they were indeed sacrificed. Like, my head started going everywhere. I was like, well, what the hell? Are we the cattle of God? Is that what we are? And the earth, instead of the plant that we're thinking actually freaking was sacrificing us? I don't know. I was just like, what the hell? But then I was like, how does that make any sense? He took away the sun and the moon to kill all the plants. I don't know. I just thought I would throw it in here. My mind went everywhere with that one. All right, the next one is kind of more along global civilization in the far past. This one is about the Chinchorro mummy that bears a remarkable witness to the antiquity of tattooing in the Americas. The remains of a male with a mustache-like dotted line above his lip, dating between 2500 and 2000 BC, is believed to represent the oldest direct evidence of tattooing in America. It is also the 4th oldest evidence of tattooing in the world. Typically, in the past, Native Americans, North and South America, had very sparse to no facial hair, so I think it's very interesting that it was facial hair being tattooed on his face, almost like, he had seen it before or something. I just thought I'd throw it in here. Okay, the next one also made me rethink a past video. So, an apparent tornado is recorded to have struck present-day Mexico City on August 24th of 1521, 2 days before the Aztec capital falls to Cortez. That kind of changes a little bit of everything for me. On the other video, I talked about Cortez shows up and everyone is looking at him like he might be the return of Quetzalcoatl. A prophecy said he would come back now, and here he is. This guy is a walking, living God. Cortez and his men, when they write in their books, make it sound like, yes, indeed, the natives looked at Cortez as if he were a god. Cortez goes in there, his friend loses his cool, starts an entire massacre bloodbath. They barely make it out, escape by the skin of their teeth, take off, come back 2 months later, and overthrow the city like it was nothing. Now, let's look at it. That's Cortez's version. Now let's look at it with this information. Cortez shows up. Possibly they looked at him like he was a god, or possibly this is what you did when a guest came to town, especially a very foreign guest. He shows up, his friend loses his cool, they start a bloodbath. As blood is spewing all over present-day Mexico City, all the diseases of the infested foreigners are covering everyone. Cortez takes off. 2 months later, he shows back up after disease has spread like wildfire among the natives of this region, and also after a tornado completely decimates them as well. Well, looks like maybe Cortez wasn't a god, and we can barely even believe anything that they wrote. This is the next one. This figurine was once displayed in the Museum of Anthropology of Jalapa. It was displayed in a section of the museum that contained toys and small figurines from the Olmec Society. Now this, of course, is in Mexico, and it's an elephant. So we have to go through the options here. Either the Olmecs were around long enough to have seen elephants in the Americas, which would mean that they were here at least since the Younger Dryas period about 12,000 years ago, because that is the end of the elephants of the Americas, or the mammoths, you know what I'm saying. Or the Olmecs are indeed Africans that came over, started a colony or civilization, built it up, made figurines of things that reminded them of home, and then something happens, their civilization is abandoned, and we find it later, and now we have all these questions. I don't know. It could really go either way. I truly believe that there was a worldwide economy at some point in time, maybe not like we have today. Somehow we were getting herbs and things indigenous to the Mediterranean, to Peru, I mean, that is one hell of a trip. And at the same time, we were getting tobacco and coca to the Egyptian pharaohs and who knows who else, because I don't think they're drug testing every mummy they come across. Obviously, we were trading goods back and forth, so I don't think it's entirely impossible that the Olmecs came from Africa. I'm not sold on it though. Why? Only because of Kennewick Man. That's right, Kennewick Man. Remember Kennewick Man, how the anthropologists 100% knew that this guy was Caucasian? They're like, look at him. This dude is obviously Caucasian. And the Native Americans were like, no, he's not. He's one of us. After the debacle that happened with all of that and DNA tests come back, not only was he Native American, but the very tribe fighting for him was related to him. They just looked different then. So the Olmecs could be native to the area and just look different then. It is plausible. This one is going to be a mystery forever. It is interesting to note that that elephant has since disappeared from the museum. This elephant was made famous by Zecharia Sitchin. He included it in one of his books as some evidence, and when he went back later to check up on the elephant to this museum, it was missing. He talked to the officials in charge, and they said they had loaned it out to a museum overseas, but it's never shown back up anywhere. Was it taken out because it created too many questions? That's what I think. Maybe either A, they don't want to admit that possibly the Olmecs were Africans that came over and built up a civilization, or B, they don't want to deal with the timeline issue. I don't know. On to the next. Okay, this is my last one, and this one leaves me with questions that I haven't found answers to, and it may not be a conspiracy at all. It might just be a story about a douchebag. On the 30th of June, 1503, Christopher Columbus beached his last two boats and was stranded in Jamaica. The indigenous people of the islands welcomed Columbus and his crew. They fed him, and after about 6 months, they were tired of his shit and they wanted him out of there. Columbus, fearing the end was near, was going through his stuff, and he found an almanac that he had brought with him. The almanac was written by Abraham Zacuto, and it covered astronomical tables written between 1475 and 1506. Upon consulting the book, he noticed that the date and time of an upcoming lunar eclipse was approaching. He was able to use this information to his advantage. He requested a meeting with the leader and told him God was very angry with him and his people for the treatment of Columbus and his men. Columbus said that God would provide a clear sign of displeasure by making the rising full moon appear inflamed with wrath. The lunar eclipse and the red moon appeared on schedule, and the indigenous people were impressed and frightened. The son of Columbus, Ferdinand, wrote that the people, with great howling and lamentation, they came running from every direction to the ships laden with provisions, praying to the admiral to intercede by all means with God on their behalf, and to please not have him visit his wrath upon them. Columbus went to his cabin to pray and timed it with his hourglass, and shortly before the totality of the end of the 48-minute eclipse, he told the frightened indigenous population that God had forgiven them and that the moon would start to reappear soon. And then it did. Here's my question. It feels like he had a pretty good understanding. Thinking that he was in India, man, did it work out in his favor that this book actually was correct, that he would be able to time the eclipse and see it from the Americas. I don't know where this book was written. I'll have to look more into it, but I'm just starting to wonder if he knew exactly where he was going. I have a crazy theory. I'm sure some point in time I'll do a video on it, but I wonder, we talk about the Masons, they have their secret organization. Back in the day, there were these guilds. There could be a guild for millers, or people that dyed fabric, for people that made furniture. There were guilds. And I wonder if he was part of a guild that possibly had old maps that knew that there was land on that side of the world and he wasn't really trying to get to India. I don't know. I'm going to look more into that. Anyway, here's my weird video, my weird random video for today. Did you find any of it interesting? Had you already heard of all of it? Is there any one that you want me to look more into to see if there is any better information on it? Anyway, you guys let me know down below. Thank you, and you guys have yourselves a very great day.